It began with a bang, though not the dramatic kind with flames and screaming and orchestral music. No, it was more of a thud, followed by an irritated grunt from Elias as his wrench slipped and introduced his thumb to the underbelly of a rusted-out atmospheric converter. He was lying beneath a broken solar hauler that hadn't flown since the second Mars lottery, swearing quietly as rain began to tap a code against the aluminum roof of his workshop. Morse code, probably. Maybe it was saying, "Get a life." The clouds outside flickered with static. Green lightning again. Damn magnetic storms. Or as Elias liked to call them, Monday. The entire town of Dustmore had gone to bed an hour ago. Not that they were a lively bunch to begin with. A few settlers, a few ex-soldiers, two stubborn roosters who had survived 3 floods, and one very confused llama that everyone swore was an accountant in a past life. But Elias liked the quiet. After years of working on research stations and watching governments argue over who owned what part of Jupiter, silence was a rare golden thing. That is, until his drone dog Marvin started barking in binary. "Probability spike detected," Marvin chirped, its metal tail wagging. "Object incoming. Estimated velocity, excessive. Projected impact, 500 meters. That way." A red light blinked to the east, just beyond the hill line, where the wind turbines moaned like hungry whales. Elias blinked at the monitor. Heat spike. Electromagnetic distortion. No radio chatter. No ship signature. "Well, that's not ominous," he muttered, pulling on a wet coat that smelled like burnt wire and regret. "Marvin, stay here." "I wasn't planning to join you on your heroic death march, Elias. I've only just discovered the concept of sarcasm. I must perfect it." Elias huffed, grabbed a flashlight, and trudged into the rain. The crater was still smoking when he arrived. Steam curled up from the cracked earth, hissing as the rain hit it. Whatever had fallen, it hadn't come gently. He squinted into the pit, flashlight beam cutting through the fog, and saw her. A small figure curled at the bottom of the impact site, completely still. For half a second, he thought it was a doll. A very lost, very burned up porcelain doll. Then she moved. He slid down without thinking. He should have been cautious. What if it was a trap? What if she was radiating enough gamma to cook his brain like scrambled eggs? But instinct beat out logic, as it often did with Elias, and especially when it came to things that shouldn't have survived. The girl was about 10 by human standards. Pale skin, too pale for any child who'd spent real time under a sun. Her hair was silvery, almost reflective, tangled in debris. But it was the ears that gave her away. Long, delicate, twitching slightly even as she passed in and out of consciousness. Not prosthetics. Real. "Hey," he said softly. "You from around here?" The girl's eyes fluttered open. They glowed faintly in the dark, gold with a swirling core, like twin galaxies had taken up residence behind her irises. She opened her mouth. No words. Just a chime, clear and musical, like glass wind chimes struck by a summer breeze. Then she fainted. Elias stared for a long second. Then another. "I knew I should have stayed home and fixed the damn microwave." He carried her back through the rain, muttering complaints the entire way. She was light, almost worryingly so, and her breath had that same humming vibration as a hover engine cycling on low. Back at the workshop, Marvin scanned her and declared her technically alive but operating under a different definition of heartbeat. Elias wrapped her in an old thermal blanket, gave her a pillow, and considered calling the military. Then he considered how they'd likely dissect her, and how the last time he tried to contact them, they put him on hold for 6 hours and accused him of prank calling a defense satellite. He sat beside her, sipping stale coffee, as rain battered the windows and the storm rolled over the hills like a sleeping god. "Guess you're my problem now, ears," he muttered. She didn't respond, just slept, chest rising and falling with that odd mechanical grace. Outside, something howled, a long, low frequency, almost like a whale call, except it was coming from the clouds. Elias didn't notice. He was already dozing in his chair, mumbling about rogue weather patterns and alien girls with a talent for bad timing. 13 years later, Elias's toaster was on fire again. It wasn't the girl's fault this time, at least not directly. This time it was just old age and spite. The same spite that lived in every machine Elias owned, from the half-sentient coffee pot that brewed existential dread instead of caffeine, to the composting toilet that insisted on singing show tunes during maintenance cycles. He jabbed the toaster with a fire-suppressing spatula and muttered, "That's it. I'm going back to freeze-dried breakfasts. They don't judge me." Marvin, hovering lazily across the room with his mechanical legs tucked up, snorted in his most patronizing algorithmic tone. "Your carbon intake suggests you're already embalming yourself from the inside, but sure, blame the toaster." Outside, the horizon flickered with faint aurora curls, green and violet waves that danced just above the skyline. The townsfolk called them ghost lights. Elias knew better. It wasn't ghosts. It was what happened when old orbital junk drifted too low and scraped against the upper atmosphere. Beautiful, radioactive, very slightly humming the chorus to a 1990s boy band hit that had somehow become embedded in satellite memory banks. He leaned back in his squeaky chair, booted up the data terminal, and ignored the dozen blinking messages from past employers, most of them phrased like polite death threats. That's when the knock came. A knock. On his door. Elias froze. No one knocked out here. No one visited. The post drones tossed packages from the air like mildly hostile pigeons. The neighbors, what few there were, communicated exclusively through encrypted grocery drop points and passive-aggressive weather balloon messages. He stood slowly. Marvin floated to full height, tail pulsing. Probability of unexpected violence? 42%, Marvin offered helpfully. Probability of plot development? 100%. "Thanks for the optimism," Elias muttered, and opened the door. She stood there in the wind, framed by the storm-churned sky like a bad omen that dressed well. Armor clung to her like molded obsidian, ribbed with organic silver veining that pulsed faintly in time with her breath. A long, dark cape fluttered behind her, stitched with constellations that shifted slightly depending on the viewer's angle. Her eyes were the same, glowing gold, a little less wide with wonder now, and far more aware. Regal, sharp. And then there were the ears. Still long, still elegant, now adorned with a crown of living crystal, humming at a pitch just below human hearing. "Elias," she said, voice echoing not just through the air, but through the bones of his old house, like someone had installed surround sound in reality itself. "I have returned." He blinked, then blinked again. "And Nova?" A flicker of a smile. "You remember." "I remember a lot of things, like how you ate an entire bag of rubber washers because you thought they were candy rings." Her face remained stern, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. "They were very chewy." A long, awkward silence settled between them. She wasn't a child anymore. She wasn't even close to human anymore. And yet something about her still crackled with the same unpredictable spark that once turned his microwave into a dimensional rift for exactly 8 minutes. Behind him, Marvin whispered, "Initiating emergency tea protocol." Nova stepped inside, her armored boots not quite touching the ground. "I apologize for the unannounced arrival. I come bearing a proposition." "Oh, good," Elias muttered. "I love propositions from people in body armor." She turned and with the softest tone he'd heard from her yet said, "You saved me when no one else would. You gave me shelter, protection." A name. He scratched his beard. "You also blew up my shed. I rebuilt it better. You rebuilt it upside down." Nova folded her arms. It had aesthetic ambition. Elias stared at her. She stared right back. Then she said without blinking, "I am queen now, Elias, of Valari Prime, and I have returned to claim you." Marvin's tea dispenser clattered to the floor. "Claim me?" Elias said slowly, as if trying out a foreign word in his mouth. "Yes, according to ancient law and neural tradition, I must return to the one who shaped my path, my grounding bond." "You are that one." "Grounding bond?" he echoed. "Sounds like something you take for indigestion." Nova took a step closer, and her armor shifted with a whispering sigh of metal and memory. "You are to come with me, to stand at my side, to advise me. And also," she added, to help me stop an interstellar civil war. Elias stared at her for a long moment. Then he pointed a finger. If this ends with me riding a laser shark again, I'm charging extra. She smiled fully now, bright and dangerous. No promises. Illis had been abducted before, once by debt collectors in orbit around Titan, who mistook him for a wanted techno-shaman named Brother Jib, and once by an overly affectionate plant creature during a bad trip on fermented moonberries. But this time, he went willingly, sort of. Nova's ship didn't look like a ship. It looked like a celestial sea creature had swallowed a cathedral and then decided to hover 3 meters above the ground, just to be smug about it. The hull shimmered with adaptive camouflage that gave Elias a headache if he stared too long, and the landing ramp unfolded like a polite tongue. As they approached, Marvin grumbled from the satchel slung across Elias's shoulder. I'm 92% certain this vessel is sentient, and I do not like the way it winked at me. It's just recalibrating its iris thrusters. It winked, Elias. Twice. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and distant stars. Soft pulses of light rippled along the curved walls. Part muscle, part machine, part mood lighting designed by someone who had opinions about feng shui. The bridge opened up like a planetarium in bloom. Holographic star charts hovered in the air, shifting constantly as the ship calculated variables in real time. Elias tried not to touch anything, which meant he accidentally activated the ship's climate poetry subroutine twice. Nova moved through it all like she belonged, because she did. Regal, unflinching, in control. Yet every so often, her hand would hover just a little too long over a console, or she'd glance at him like she was waiting for him to scold her for nearly launching torpedoes at the moon. He didn't. He just made her tea and pretended not to notice. So let me get this straight, Elias said, sprawled across a levitating couch shaped like a crescent moon. You went home, staged a rebellion, overthrew a regime, and got crowned queen. And now you've come back to drag me into some war between you and the Ash Spire, Nova finished. She leaned against a console, arms folded, ears twitching faintly. A rogue faction, remnants of the old empire. They believe Valari purity must be preserved. No hybrids, no outsiders, no evolution. Elias raised a brow. I see. So racist space fascists with shiny armor. They call it traditionalist purity, but yes, their leader is High Regent Draxel. He controls 3 sectors, 2 wormholes, and a species of battle squids with personal vendettas. Elias nodded slowly. Battle squids, naturally. Nova stepped forward, her expression serious. They've been searching for me, for you. They don't know your name yet, but they know a grounding bond exists. If they find you before I secure the crown shard, let me guess. Galactic disaster, rebellions, famine, universal cable outages. Exactly, she said with a completely straight face. There was silence for a beat. Then Elias sighed and sipped his tea. And here I thought retirement would mean fewer explosions. A soft alarm chimed. Marvin popped up from the satchel and projected a 3-dimensional alert hologram. Unregistered vessel approaching at high velocity. Trajectory suggests boarding intent. Might I suggest panicking? Nova spun toward the display, her fingers flying across the controls. Ash Spire scouts. That was fast. Do I get a gun? Elias asked, standing. Nova handed him what looked like a crystal slingshot wrapped in nanoweave filaments. This better shoot more than angry feelings. A thunderous clang echoed through the hull. The ship groaned in protest, organic panels flaring open like armored petals. Nova pressed her palm to a control node. Engaging evasive routines. Define evasive, Elias said. Teleporting into a plasma storm while broadcasting decoy distress calls across 5 dimensions. Elias blinked. You're a drama queen. I am a queen. In the next instant, the ship shimmered out of local space. For precisely 3.4 seconds, they existed in a trans-dimensional echo chamber filled with static and the sound of 1970s elevator music. An unfortunate glitch in the decoy subroutine that Nova blamed on Marvin. When they re-emerged, the stars had shifted. They were alone for now. Elias exhaled. You weren't kidding. They really do want me dead. Nova turned to him. Her face softened for the first time since they'd left Earth. Not dead, Elias. Just not with me. He opened his mouth to speak, but Marvin beat him to it. Aw, that's the nicest way anyone's ever threatened your life. Nova smirked, just barely. I warned you. This path would not be easy. Elias slumped back onto the couch. Yeah, well, you brought snacks, right? Nova reached into her cloak and tossed him a ration cube. It tasted like betrayal and faintly of ham. The cafeteria aboard Nova's flagship, the Crownless Dawn, was deceptively cheerful for a vessel designed to withstand solar flares and armed rebellions. The walls were paneled in soft coral light, and the floor hummed beneath their boots like a sleeping whale dreaming of fusion reactors. Tables floated at odd angles unless manually anchored, and a suspiciously upbeat tune leaked from unseen speakers. Elias squinted at the menu panel. Tell me again why your royal warship serves something called neutron waffles. Nova stood beside him in full regal armor, arms clasped behind her back in her best queenly posture. Because they're delicious, and theoretically impossible to overcook. Marvin hovered nearby, analyzing the syrup dispenser. Correction? The neutron waffles are compressed via hyperdense lattice folds. They contain more calories than a collapsing sun. Elias tapped the order button anyway. Perfect. I've always wanted breakfast that could power a small moon. They sat, Elias floated slightly in a semi-magnetized seat, while Nova stood like someone allergic to chairs. Her cloak billowed dramatically, even without a breeze. The waffles arrived moments later with a cheerful bing, and the faint sound of a choir screaming in reverse. Elias poked one. Do they always vibrate? They're settling, Nova said primly. The moment of absurd domesticity was short-lived. A red glyph flared across the wall. Coded transmission, high security, queen only. Nova frowned and waved her hand across the interface, casting a circular ripple of light. The face that appeared was not a friendly one. High Regent Draxel was a tangle of wires, bone plating, and sharp smiles. His elongated skull was crowned with a mechanical halo that pulsed in time with his speech. Dearest Nova, he said in a voice that oozed condescension and reverb. Still dragging your human pet through the stars, I see. Elias raised his hand. Hello, I'm the pet, Draxel sneered. I offer you one final warning. Return the shard, cease your false claim, and abandon that relic of dirt and decay before his scent pollutes the throne. Nova's voice was ice. You're afraid of what he reminds you. Of your weakness, Draxel spat. Of your sentimentality. Of your failure. You will fall. The transmission cut with a dramatic burst of static and what sounded suspiciously like a goat scream. Elias sipped from his glowing mug of synth cider. Well, that was warm and fuzzy. When do we send him a fruit basket? Nova sat, finally, and pinched the bridge of her nose. Draxel's getting desperate. He wouldn't contact me directly unless he'd lost one of the Void Hounds. Elias leaned back, slightly rotating in place. Void Hounds? Bounty hunters, genetically sculpted for long-range tracking. One of them might already be aboard. Marvin blinked several lights in rapid succession. May I suggest total paranoia mode? Please, Elias said. That's my baseline personality. Suddenly the lights dimmed. Not the ship's doing. Nova's expression tightened. A presence entered the cafeteria. It moved like a ripple of oil, humanoid in shape but unnaturally tall, with limbs that bent too smoothly and eyes like molten onyx. Its voice was soft and wrong, like silk scraping glass. You are the human called Elias. Elias stood, mouth full of waffle. You're going to try to kill me, aren't you? The creature nodded once, as if acknowledging an appointment. Nova was already moving. Her armor flared open at the back, releasing twin rods of condensed plasma. By royal decree, you are trespassing on sovereign territory. I am only here for the anchor, it whispered. The queen may reign, but without gravity, the crown floats. Elias mumbled, That's actually kind of poetic. Then it lunged. What followed was an elegant mess of destruction. Tables flew, the choir music pitched into emergency operatic screaming, and Marvin activated what he proudly called Plan F, which involved blaring soap opera theme music and releasing a fog of glitter-based confusion gas. Nova's blades danced, carving streaks of light through the cafeteria. The Void Hound phased in and out of sight, like bad reception on a fever dream. Elias, for his part, threw a tray with perfect comedic timing and accidentally hit the enemy square in the face. The creature vanished in a pulse of dark energy. The silence that followed was loud. Marvin sneezed. Glitter fell from the ceiling like defeated stars. "Status?" Nova asked. Elias picked up his half-eaten neutron waffle. "Still edible." She smiled just a little. "We'll need to change ships." "Why?" He gestured around. "This place now smells like ozone and cooked nightmare. Also, your syrup dispenser's on fire." Nova stood, regal again. "Then we'll go to the Temple of Lost Frequencies. The Crown Shard is waiting." Elias sighed. "Do they have waffles?" Nova didn't answer, which meant probably yes, or probably lasers. The Temple of Lost Frequencies didn't look like a temple. It looked like someone had melted a cathedral, fed it through a black hole, and then glued it back together using outdated subspace encryption keys. It floated at the heart of a collapsed nebula, suspended between gravity wells like an architectural dare. The only way to approach was aboard a shuttle rigged with frequency harmonizers, and even then, only if you knew the song. "This is the worst GPS system I've ever seen," Elias muttered, gripping the edge of his seat as the shuttle shuddered through another harmonic burst. "Turn left at the dying star, take the exit ramp made of vibrating math, and voila. You're at the house of cosmic brain aneurysms." Nova stood at the helm, eyes closed, humming softly. Literally humming. The controls responded to her voice, modulating the shuttle's energy field to match the temple's resonant access chord. The sound wasn't just music, it was geometry, language, and physics all at once. It gave Elias a headache and Marvin a desire to learn jazz fusion. "Almost there," Nova said, opening her eyes. "The entrance will appear after the next phase shift." Elias looked out the viewport just in time to see a void open like a blinking eye in space. The temple emerged from nothing, each layer peeling back in nested dimensions, unfolding with the grace of a thought remembered. Great spires twisted upward in patterns not meant for Euclidean minds. The walls shimmered with data, unreadable scripts scrolling across every surface. "I'm gonna need a stiff drink after this," Elias said. "Maybe something that erases memories." "I already have a drink like that," Marvin added cheerfully. "It's called your cooking." The shuttle docked with a soft sigh of pressurized reverence. The inner sanctum greeted them with warmth, unnatural for something ancient and supposedly abandoned. The air smelled of ionized metal, crushed stardust, and mint. "Is the mint intentional?" Elias asked. Nova nodded. "Valari tradition, purity of breath before truth." And here I thought it was just to cover up temple funk. Inside, the chamber stretched impossibly far, filled with glimmering obelisks that pulsed with forgotten memories. Each was attuned to a pair, one royal, one bonded. Elias followed Nova through the maze, stepping carefully around floating glyphs that buzzed like inquisitive bees. "This place," Nova said softly, "is where Valari queens confront their origin echoes, the final test before the crown shard awakens." "Is there a written test? Because I forgot my cheat sheet." Nova touched a pedestal. Light poured from it, enveloping them. Then everything changed. Elias blinked. He was home, sort of, an echo of his old workshop, recreated with unnerving accuracy. The chair still squeaked. The toaster was mid-smolder. But he was alone, except he wasn't. A younger version of himself leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. He looked tired, haunted, real. "What are you even doing?" the Echo Elias asked. "Playing Galactic sidekick? Hoping it gives your life meaning?" "Oh, good," Elias said. "It's the self-doubt hologram. I missed you." Meanwhile, Nova faced her own vision. A throne room in ruins, corpses of those she once trusted, and atop the broken dais, a version of herself clad in black glass armor, face twisted into a mask of cold control. "You ruled without grounding," the specter whispered. "Without him. And look what you became." Nova stood her ground. "I remember who I was, who he helped me become. That is why I came back. The illusions faded. They stood together again, breath ragged, silence thick. Then the temple stirred. The floor beneath them split to reveal the crown shard, a crystalline construct floating above a pedestal, glowing with memory energy. It pulsed like a heart, responding to their presence, not just to Nova, but to Elias as well. It accepts us, she breathed. Wait, it can not accept people? Elias asked, stepping back. Was that an option? Nova smiled. Bond confirmed. Rain authorized. Lights bloomed across the chamber. Somewhere, temple bells rang in dimensions Elias was pretty sure didn't exist until 5 minutes ago. As they walked back to the shuttle, he asked, "So what does this crown thing do exactly?" Nova's smile widened. Amplifies my authority. Channels my will. Projects peace across entire sectors. Cool, totally fine. No pressure, just cosmic royalty stuff. Also, she added, it lets me teleport up to 5 objects at once and bake muffins instantly. Okay, now that's power. The coronation chamber orbited Valari Prime like a crown-shaped moon, crafted from fused crystal and time-folded alloy. It shimmered above the clouds, visible even from the planet's surface, a celestial monument to rebirth, unity, and the undeniable flair of someone who once hot-wired a blender just to see if it could make music. Inside, Elias was sweating into his ceremonial tunic. Explain again why this thing itches like it's been cursed by an angry raccoon? He asked, tugging at the golden collar. Nova, resplendent in her flowing armor, laced with living light, adjusted the crimson sash draped across her shoulder. Because it's woven from spider silk memory thread and royal formality. Both are known irritants to humans. Formality's been trying to kill me for years, Elias muttered. This is just its final move. All around them, the great chamber filled with delegates, holographic and physical, representing dozens of worlds, each seated in floating rings that rotated slowly, their positions a dance of diplomacy and subtle intimidation. Every eye, tentacle, sensory orb, and psionic tendril was focused on the pair standing atop the central platform. Behind them, the crown shard hovered, fully awakened now, pulsing with the power of tradition, truth, and a dash of reality-bending gravitas. It hummed gently, like a lullaby played on an instrument that hadn't been invented yet. As the ritual began, Elias half expected something to explode. Instead, the doors did. A flash of static, and Draxil entered, not through the ceremonial arches like a civilized villain, but via a hijacked transmatter spike, flanked by 2 void hounds and wearing a grin built from old grudges and recycled armor. Nova stepped forward, voice echoing across the dome. You violate sacred grounds. Draxil bowed mockingly. Royal decorum was never my strong suit. The room tensed. Delegates bristled. Marvin, floating above the crowd with a streaming banner that read, Celebrate peace with hot noodle salsa, initiated his combat routine. Elias sighed and reached under the podium, pulling out the just-in-case device Nova had insisted he carry. A compact, collapsible grav lance that vibrated with stored kinetic potential. Do we have to fight during the coronation? Elias asked. Can't we just solve this with an aggressive dance battle or something? Nova's eyes twinkled. Not unless you've secretly learned Valari footwork. Then violence it is. The battle that erupted was chaotic and weirdly elegant. Nova moved like a starstorm, wielding light and law, her armor refracting truth itself as she dueled Draxil. Elias, less elegant, mostly ran interference, tripping void hounds, tossing ceremonial fruits with deadly accuracy, and at one point getting launched into the air by an anti-grav glitch and crashing into a diplomatic pudding sculpture. Worth it, he wheezed from inside the raspberry wreckage. In the end, Nova stood victorious. Draxil fell, literally and politically, his last words drowned out by the crown shard's ascending hum. He was taken into custody by a delegation of stern, jellyfish-like beings from Sector 7 who prided themselves on rehabilitation through interpretive dance therapy. Nova turned to Elias, bloodless but breathless, as the chamber resettled into peace. You stayed, she said simply. He looked around at the mess, at the reassembling crowd, at Marvin still trying to sell merchandise. Yeah, Elias said. Turns out intergalactic warfare, political chaos, and mildly sentient breakfast foods are, weirdly, my thing. Nova laughed, genuinely, fully, the sound of it bright and crystalline. Then stay longer. He met her gaze. As your advisor? As whatever you want to be. The coronation proceeded without further drama. Nova took the throne, radiant and unshaken. Elias was officially recognized as her grounding bond, a title that came with several odd privileges, including veto power over planetary nap schedules and a personalized seat that adjusted based on sarcasm levels. In the weeks that followed, peace blossomed like a stubborn weed in the cracks of war. Treaties were signed, borders redrawn, the Ash Spire disbanded, its followers defecting to more inclusive ideologies, or knitting clubs. Nova's reign was steady, firm, and surprisingly full of festivals. And Elias? He finally fixed the toaster. He still couldn't sleep some nights. The stars were too loud. But he had a place now, a purpose. Someone who believed in him, not because he was a hero, but because he'd once offered a frightened girl a couch, a blanket, and safety. That had been enough to build an empire, and somehow that still made him laugh. Even if the waffles still vibrated.